Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman. Guys, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell because today's episode is going to rock. We're talking with my friend Trey. He's actually been on all three of my shows. He kicks ass, takes names. You've seen him on Forbes Inc. He's everywhere. We're going to be talking about social marketing today. So, guys, make sure that you got a pen and paper ready. We're also going to ruffle some feathers today. So it's going to be a fun episode. Trey, my brother, what is up?
Not much, man. It's a beautiful day in Fort Collins, and I'm glad to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, and like I said, you've been on all three of my shows. You've even been on it when it was just audio. So I'm so glad to be able to hop back on. So how's everything going in your world?
Oh, man, it's great. It's been a lot of growth, a lot of stuff that makes me uncomfortable, but that is ultimately the biggest part of being an entrepreneur. I mean, lately, it's been a lot of trying to maintain everything I have going on within the business and within my consulting clients while getting moved in. And that's a whole different level of chaos that I haven't quite experienced before because I've mostly been in one spot while doing all this stuff.
Okay, so now for the people that don't know you, give us a quick down and dirty about where you come from, where you grew up, and how you became the superstar that you are today.
Oh, man. So I'll try to make this quick, but Trey Carmichael, obviously, you said that. I like to say that I'm a crazy, passionate life changer that gives anyone and everyone the space they need to grow. The way that I typically do that is by helping them systemize their businesses, get all of their marketing straight. And the way that I found my way into that world is a little bit different than most. I don't have any real formal education, none that I completed. I started some actual like college classes on marketing and stuff, and very quickly realized because of my actual in the field experience with it that most of what they were teaching was already severely outdated. And some of the foundational stuff worked, but it wasn't quite there. But ultimately, how I found myself in that space was I was pretty severely addicted to drugs. I was dealing drugs, and I knew I wanted to do something different. I knew I desperately wanted something different. And the only reason I even got tied up in the drugs, I've learned as I've done a lot of growth and work with different people, is I was seeking a tribe mentality and I was seeking to be an entrepreneur. I just wanted to be accepted into a tribe and have a way that I could make money on my own terms instead of just jumping in and being some cog in someone else's system for the most part. So I started looking for a way out, and thankfully I was given an opportunity by one of my old friends, Kyler Gifford. I went to high school with him, and at the time he was 22 years old. And to be honest with you, he was on the back end of a fairly long dry spell as a real estate agent. And he gave me the opportunity to build him a website, get him established on social media, and amplify some of the stuff that he was doing because he very much was an expert. He was great with people. He knew all of the ins and out of like how to actually do his job very well. So all I had to do was amplify him and build the platform. And within about 3 months, I was actually able to make him the top producer in his office by securing him some Google rankings locally. Shortly after that, he had a kid and he was able to focus on that kid and pouring into that kid and kind of just pass leads out to people in his office while taking the listings that he wanted to, so he could focus on being a dad while still being the provider and having that take home. So that's really when it clicked with me that, oh, I can actually help people with what I do. So I got very obsessed with the systemization, the marketing, and how can I help people achieve as much as they want to achieve in as little time as possible so that they can actually get that fulfillment of being able to go out and do the thing and then go home to their families and live a life and have like more balance than I saw from like most of the examples I saw growing up was one of the parents working full time, being exhausted, like not really having time to pour into the kid like they wanted it to, like one of the parents being drunk, one of the parents being on drugs, like just all these different things. So I never saw like, man, I'm gonna be honest, I completely just lost my train of thought.
It's all right though.
But like, that's why I found my way into that space. So I wanted to create a way for people to be better examples than I saw growing up. And I saw that through the systemization, the marketing, and actually taking a long-term approach to these things, that they can actually have those things and that balance. That's where I was trying to tie it up to. So I just got obsessed. So I'm passionate about it.
All right. So one thing that I love, and we talked about this the last time, but we really didn't dig too deep. Most of my, like, as we talked about earlier, most of my people that listen to the show are veterpreneurs. What that means, veteran entrepreneurs. And even if you're in the military for 30 seconds, you're taught about SOPs, standard operation procedures. But I think once a lot of people, once they first start a business, it's just like there are no SOPs, there are no business plan. They just wing it until they're like $10,000 in debt and don't know what the shit just happened. So talk to us a little bit about having SOPs before you even start your business.
Yeah, man. So it's kind of hard to have SOPs before you even start your business, but I like to at least have a model and structure to move in from the very beginning. And then as you start doing the different tasks, I advise every entrepreneur, even when you're a one-man band, to start actually documenting what you're doing. Because what you track, you can optimize. What you're not tracking, you can't really optimize. So as you're documenting these things, you're going to find yourself doing it more efficiently, more effectively, going back to that, finding more efficient ways to do it. And then ultimately, that's what's going to turn into your standard operating procedures. And ultimately, once you get to the point where you're hiring a team, integrating virtual assistants and all of those things, like having those standard operating procedures makes it tremendously easier because they're not guessing on what to do next. Even after you do the training with them, a lot of the times, not everything's going to click the first time. So it's going to save you time in the long run once you start hiring people, as well as, like, let's just be honest. Everybody's very human. Not having standard operating procedures, in my opinion, is setting yourself up for failure, because some days as humans, we wake up and we're just like, man, what the hell am I doing with myself right now? Like, do I have a task list? Are there things on my calendar? Like, I need something. I personally need something that I can refer to and say, oh yeah, this is what I need to do today. So just the reality that we're human is a reason to start documenting your standard operating procedures now. Plus, for the long term, it just makes that scale. Once you lean into scale, it just makes your life so much easier.
And, that's something I agree on. At one point when I first started the podcast, as you remember, I was recording 5 days a week, and I was getting nowhere. And now I'm recording 2 days a week, but I have somebody doing my promotion, somebody doing my YouTube, somebody doing all this. And once I started building a team, I had to start following procedures and SOPs to make sure that things got done, because even though you're giving it to other people, you still got to make sure that shit still getting done. Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if they don't know how to do it, then they can't do it. And in the long run, another caveat to that is, what happens if you get sick once you have that team? What if someone needs to step up and do something that you usually do that day? Are they completely out of luck? Or is there at least an instruction manual that someone can access? Or is everything just over because you're out of the door that day?
So now, okay, I'm a 45-year-old guy. I just get out of the military. It's December 7th, 2022. I want to start a business. What do you suggest a brand newbie? what kind of business would you suggest in the year 2022 going into 2023?
So there's really a couple different ways to answer that. And I mean, there's the way that I think is the kind of I'm going to give you both answers. There's the surface level sort of, I'd almost call it transactional, but I don't know if that's the right word for it, answer, where I would say pick something in tech, pick something related to data, pick something that's related to AI, because that's what's popular right now. That's going to be kind of the bandwagons that you can jump on to make some money quickly. Now, the authentic answer to that I actually want to give is to take that with a grain of salt and kind of have an idea what's actually growing in the market right now, but figure out what you actually enjoy and what you can actually commit to doing every day. And don't get me wrong, you don't have to love the thing, love doing all of the actions and processes that go into the thing that make you money, but you need to not hate them. So what I see a lot of the times is a lot of people jump into a business and they start one of those, let's just call it a bandwagon business, where they choose something that's popular right now and it just doesn't stick. They can't make it work for whatever reason. And most of the time it's because they jumped on a bandwagon. They don't necessarily even quite understand what they're selling. Whereas if you actually take that with a grain of salt, figure out where you can actually apply the stuff that you have an interest in and where you can work your way into the technology market based on your actual interests. I mean, like, look at what you're doing, for example. The media and online world is what's growing right now. You want to reach veterans and entrepreneurs and help them be better people and make comebacks and establish that they want to establish. So you grabbed onto the technology that's best helping you, that's going to best serve you to do that. That's what I recommend people do. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but that's the answer that I wish somebody would have told me, because full transparency, when I got into the marketing space, I sold a shitload of Instagram automation. I ended up getting people's accounts shut down, and I felt like I screwed a bunch of people over, even though I did exactly what I said I was going to do. Community guidelines of the social media platforms just changed while we were doing it. I jumped on what was hot in the media instead of focusing on what I knew worked, which is all of the long-term stuff and then making it all work together. So choose something you're actually passionate about and that you can do every day without just ending up hating it or feeling like you're living a false life, because that's why people burn out. That's why they fall off. No one can be a fake person forever. And that's what happens when you do a bandwagon business.
All right. So, like, just for hop, for instance, a lot of people think, oh, podcasting is hot. You know, Joe Rogan's killing it. I'm going to join and get a podcast. And then they start doing it and they don't realize it takes work. Mm-hmm. You know, that the average podcast lasts 15 episodes, then you're off, then you're out. And so, but I think, like you said, you got to make sure you like what you do, but you also have to realize you got to put in a hell of a lot of work in order to be successful, right? Because we're going to go deep into this. So hold on one second. I want to go deep into this. I want to thank our sponsors. As you guys know, I love my coffee, but everyone I got tasted like ass, and it didn't give me the energy that I needed. So I came out with my own called Vertical Momentum Coffee. Twice the amount of caffeine, twice the energy, twice the taste. It's actually made and hand roasted by veterans' hands, and 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans struggling with PSD and homelessness. So if you like coffee with a mission, write coffee down below. Also, if you're a guy like me that likes to be part of a mastermind, I'm part of a mastermind called Operation Life. And if you guys are a guy like me that wants to start a business but also wants to change the world, write Operation Life down below. All right, so now let's get into this nitty gritty. I want to get dirty. I want to ruffle a few feathers, not mentioning any names, guys, because I'm not about to get sued, but there's been some stupid people, especially coaches, in in the garage taking pictures with somebody else's Lambo and selling fake shit, getting people into something knowing they should never be in it in the first place. So let's talk about what we were going to talk about earlier about coaches and what's going on in the space right now.
Oh man, so where do I start with that one? That's kind of a big topic. So one of the things that I like to try to explain to people quickly when I get connected with them is a lot of this space and a lot of the people in it, they operate purely on what I like to refer to as smoke, mirrors, and money. And I will say before I really go into this and I start kind of picking that apart, that the smoke and mirrors, they have their place and they can be used to amplify good things in a very powerful way. And quite frankly, they are the things that work, but they're also being misused by a lot of people who don't necessarily know what they're acting like they know. They're just using these proven systems and proven smoke and mirrors method to get you to make that buying decision. And what's happening is a lot of these people, they're going out there, they're renting an Airbnb, they're having their friend bring their car over, like they're filming some ads that follow like some certain neuro-linguistic programming processes and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, they're a coach. When this person who they may have overcome something and they might be a very good coach for some people that need to overcome that, or they might be if we're referring to a business consultant, they might be a good business consultant for somebody specifically who wants to do specifically that. But what I'm seeing is a lot of people see one-off success in one space or in one area of their life, and then they come out and be a coach. They make the right steps to position themselves that way. And then quite frankly, they're doing a lot more damage than good, because what's happening is every time that they encounter a situation that they didn't actually personally overcome, or work with somebody to already have to overcome that situation with them, they don't really know. And next thing you know, they're just regurgitating what some templated thing that some other coach told them that may or may not have anything to do with that situation whatsoever. And, back to the bandwagon business, like the marketing space and the coaching space, like they've both become very popular places to go because, quite frankly, you can pull a few levers, spend the money in the right way, say the right words, and people are going to make buying decisions with you. So at the end of the day, you just have to build up an awareness that the smoke and mirrors exist. If you're going to wield them, use them in an ethical way is what I always ask of people. But that's neither here nor there. Most people are just going to use it to amplify exactly who they are. But you have to be careful who you associate with, because it's very easy to put on a perception in this online world that we live in, is the short answer to that.
Okay, so now for me, like me and my friend Gary Vaynerchuk, we decided that for 3 years, we're not going to monetize our show at all. And January 1st is coming up. So it'll be 3 years. And the reason why we did that, because we wanted to show, like you were talking about, track record.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure that when people work with me, they know that, I've been able to learn from some of the greats like yourself, like David Meltzer, Lee Steinberg, Robert Kiyosaki, Sharon Lecter, and when those people give you credit, then you actually showing a track record. But I see like a lot of people, they'll go to a Tony Robbins event, maybe get a picture with them, and then all of a sudden next week they're a life coach at the age of 21. You're like, yep. I don't get it. So I think you have to, like you said, you have to have some kind of track record in order to be considered an expert in your field instead of taking a weekend course and being a personal trainer, right?
Yep. And everybody starts somewhere. And the thing that I think most people skip over and forget about, that everybody thinks that they can just start charging all these high ticket amounts overnight. And like, the reality is, when I first started taking clients, I didn't know what I was doing. I told people I didn't know what I was doing. And I said, hey, I'm doing it for bare minimum. So you're literally just paying for my time because I want to learn how to do this. Like, do you want to make that decision with me? And I think that quite frankly, I think that a lot of the people in the agency space, in the coaching space, etc., they very much skip over the time that they should take to actually hone their craft before they start charging those 5-figure price tags and developing themselves a terrible reputation because they charged someone a 5-figure price tag and it was slightly different than the situation they experienced, so they didn't get the results they expected.
I totally agree. Now, since I've had you on the show, I think it's been a year now, and the first time I had you on the show has been 3 years. The landscape has changed. Everything is now within this little box, and a lot of things are, everything's going digital, evergreen. So talk to us about, the digital landscape in 2022 going into 23.
So ultimately, man, I have a little bit different of a perspective than a lot of the marketers out there, especially if you see a lot of the Facebook ads and what they're trying to sell you in their ads so they can sell you something that's going to get you rich in 30 days or build you a 6-figure business in 30 days. Like, I have a completely different approach than those people. I think things have to be systematically grown. You have to go through that learning process. You have to actually document things. And as you get better, you can charge progressively more money, etc. But the way to do that is you have to be able to build an authority online. And that is one of the really overwhelming things because it takes a lot of consistency. There's a lot of different platforms that you need to be on. And what I'm finding to be interesting is it's kind of shifting in reverse, where for the longest time it was blogs, it was long form content, and that's what was generating leads. And then it shifted to where everybody was generating a shitload of leads off Facebook, off all these different platforms, and they were using social media. I've always believed that you had to have sort of a combination of both. And what I break that down to is the long-term and the short-term media. And at the end of the day, they all work together. So what I like to focus on is to pick a form of long-term media. That be in your long-term media is your podcasts, your blog posts, and anything that's actually going to rank on Google and compound traffic and build up authority for you over time. So what I like to focus on is choosing long-form media like this podcast, for instance, and prioritizing something like this to create content. That's going to allow you to create mass amount of content in ultimately what's a fairly short amount of time. And then that content is going to go to Google, compound for you over time, and be the stuff that gives you that long-term compounding result. And then on the other hand of that, there's your short-term media, and that's all of your social media, your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever other social media platform pops up and it's hot for the moment. But I look at the short-term media as places that I'm renting. And my goal is always just to repurpose my long-term media and to use those repurposed clips, quotes, whatever it is that's going to position me as an authority on social media to get people to move over to that long-term media where I have a little bit more control. I have the option to send them somewhere else, to a funnel, etc. Whereas like on Facebook, if you put a link in your post, they limit your reach.
Yep.
If you put a link in your description on your podcast or your YouTube, or if you put links in your blog posts, that's encouraged, quite frankly. The Google and all of the long form aggregators, they want you to be an aggregator. They want to have things to crawl. That's how they designate who's authoritative. Whereas on social media, it's eyeballs and audiences that you're renting from some other multi-billion-dollar platform that, quite frankly, doesn't really want to share them with you unless you're paying them money. So I like to focus on the things that are going to compound, use the short-term media to drive traffic to it, build up earned media, which earned media is things like appearing on this podcast, appearing in this publication. So getting featured in other people's long-form media, because I can tell you how cool I am until my face turns blue. But the fact that I'm on your show, your people who trust you automatically think I might even be a little bit cooler than I probably am, just because you trust me.
And you are cool.
Yeah. So that's the way that the internet works. So I focus on long-term media, getting featured in earned media, which is still falling under the long-term media, and then using short-term media to drive everything back to that. And then once you have like some sort of saturation on Google, you have an authority when people look at you on different platforms, then I think you should start looking in the Facebook ads. Then I think you should start looking in the YouTube ads. Like, a lot of people out there, they're going to tell you, yeah, just get on Facebook and do organic marketing and run Facebook ads. And it's like, yeah, that can work. I'm not going to tell you it can't work, because there's a lot of very successful people doing that. But there's also a lot of people who were very successful doing that, who their Facebook account got shut down, and I watched them completely dwindle out and burn out and never come back.
Yep.
So that's why I focus on long-term media that can be repurposed, so that you're actually making the most of your time and doing stuff that's going to compound.
And I agree. And I have one of my friends, Dennis. We know Dennis. He came on the show, and he talks about, there's a lot of podcasters, but they're not on YouTube. And he's like, but YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. Google is number one, and number two is owned by number one. So why are you not on YouTube to put your long form content on? But also, a lot of people are so enamored with making shorts, making Instagram stories. But like you said, I think you have to put it all together instead of just making it. Because like you said, there's been a lot of companies that at one point were so hot on Facebook until Zuck decided to change the algorithm, and some businesses were out of business within 24 hours.
Yep.
So I definitely agree that you have to, like you said, make your short term. Like for me, I do one long-term video every day, and I do some shorts also every day. So it's kicking in the algorithm, every day just to stay relevant. But there's also some social media platforms like Pinterest that a lot of people wouldn't even think about. But with Pinterest, people can pin your stuff from 5 years ago. So it'll keep on kicking up into the algorithm, where if you put something on Facebook, within 24 hours, it's gone.
Yep.
So, and like TikTok, within 24 hours, it can be gone. So I think sometimes people have to figure out, what's going to stay long-term and what's going to stay short-term. So now, what is your opinion? Like for me, I took a class on digital class because I was going to prove them wrong. I said digital marketing is bullshit. It doesn't work. So I took the class, and I put my book out on digital, and I put my coffee, and then my father passed on Valentine's Day this year, and I had to be out of work for a month. All of a sudden, checks started coming in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's when I realized the power of evergreen products. So please talk to us a little bit about how important evergreen product is, because the internet does not shut down at all.
Absolutely, man. So like that is one of the biggest thing that I preach to people I work with. If you get caught in the loop of oh my God, I need to create individual content for every single one of these. If you actually start looking, there's probably 20 different social media platforms or something that you could be on. Like, if you start thinking that you need to be on just every single one of them, that doesn't work. People burn out doing that. You can't create individual content like that. And can't is a strong word. You as an individual person can't create that. Once you hire a team, it becomes very possible once you shoot a bunch of long form content like this, repurpose it. Now you can actually have that compounding rollout of content on all your different platforms, but you have to first prioritize your things that are going to pay off long term. One of the things that I teach people is to focus on creating assets. Like, for instance, just going live on Facebook, you're not really creating an asset, but you're spending 15, 20 minutes talking. You're spending maybe 30 minutes interviewing somebody. Why aren't you making that a podcast so that it's an actual asset? How can you make the most out of all of your time so that you create as many assets as possible, and then leverage those assets as much as possible so that you don't have to spend more of your time? That's one of the things that one of my mentors, Dan Nicholson, has been really beating into me, is kind of rigging the game and playing my own game so that all of the actions that I take actually take me closer to what I want, instead of just bringing me more of what I want, instead of just making me more money. Like, I need to get closer to it so it takes less effort to get there consistently. Like, that is kind of the strategy that I take. And the more digital real estate you build across Google, the closer you are to that money, the closer you are to that audience, the closer you are to this person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking as you talk, because I've had Dan on the show, and Dan is truly amazing. But something a lot of people I hear of because I've become a social media creator and not a consumer. I've changed over time, like Russell Brunson talked about in his book, The Trilogy Series. But a lot of people complain about the algorithms instead of actually working with the algorithms. They fight the algorithms for some reason instead of putting it in their favor, like you're doing. Like you say, you're making everything work for you. So talk about that, working with the algorithms and not working against them, because each platform has a different reason, has a different thing that they like. So, but a lot of people just they put one thing and they put it across everywhere. And 90% of them, it's not going to get any traction because it's going against the algorithm.
Yeah. So how do I answer this the right way? Because honestly, most of the time, my first answer is just to kind of to forget about the algorithm and just to focus on creating content, and content that's authentic, that people can relate to, so that you can actually build relationships. And I'm a big fan of the relationships over algorithm. And I mean, if you, as like just an example, if you go to my social media and stuff, like, I don't get that much engagement, but I do get on a lot of podcasts. I have a lot of very strong relationships, and I have various other audiences that I can leverage, because I'd rather build relationships than build a massive audience of people that I feel like I have to constantly create content for. That's not what I want. So ultimately, instead of just working with the algorithm, I prefer to make my own rules. And that's something that Dan has been very much reiterating to me. And quite frankly, all my content is right now is I do interviews with high authority people that I've actually built relationships with. I have relationships with most of the people that I bring on my show. And then I put that on Google. Here soon, we're going to start putting it on YouTube. That builds up some amount of saturation. People see who I'm associating with. That builds trust. And then I have a VA that cuts it into short clips so that I can take that long form media And yes, I am giving the algorithm what it wants by giving it those short clips, but I'm still just doing it my way and playing my game. And just, I try to work the algorithm into it a little bit, but I'm not necessarily just like hitched to an algorithm, and that's what makes all my decisions. I'm very much more relationship based. Like I said, it's just interviews, and then I have a bunch of reels because I understand that the Facebook algorithm is very fickle and that the Instagram algorithm is very fickle. People care more about cute dogs and animals and stuff like that than they do most of the valuable content at the end of the day, because it actually takes brain power to process that valuable content and do something with it. Whereas they can say, "Ooh, dog, it made me smile." So like, I know that. So I play my game and I record my interviews with people I actually build relationships with. I repurpose that content. And then anytime I'm scrolling through reels, just laughing at silly shit, I try to make it productive too. And I make the time that I'm even just like messing around a little bit productive, because I understand that algorithm is fickle. So if I find a sound that I think is funny that I can use my animals to make a quick reel with, all my reels take as long as they are to make most of the time, maybe a couple minutes longer. And I'm going to play with my animals anyways. I'm going to look at those reels anyways. I'm going to talk to these cool people anyways. So I'd rather just do my thing and build relationships than focus on an algorithm. And I mean, yeah, I am going to repurpose it so that I can kind of feed the algorithm what it wants. But if I don't want to do it, I'm just not going to do it.
Okay, now one thing I think that doesn't get talked about a lot is building your own email list. Because sometimes I realize that if one day Zuck decides, you know what, guys, I'm done with all this bullshit. Facebook, I'm closing down. A lot of people that had millions of followers are going to be shit out of luck. But if you own your own email list, you have a much more chance of being successful. So do you believe in owning your own lists?
I believe in any kind of audience you can actually own, whether it's an email list, whether it's your own networking event, whether it's your own actually engaged Facebook group, like wherever you can organize people for the long term, you want to own your audience or you're very much limited to what you can say. And the email and text lists are, in my opinion, the most powerful way to maintain that relationship, keep making sales, and just to build that much stronger community, because it goes a step above. But ultimately, any way that you can own an audience is the way that you want to do it. It's the same way that I feel about focusing on owned and long-term media. It's what's going to pay off for the long term is actually owning that list. So there's a lot of different ways to build an email list, and I like to build other audiences that build email lists. I like to collaborate with people to build email lists.
And I love that.
Podcasts.
I'm a big collaborator. I love meeting with people like yourself and my friends that I have. I love collaborating. And like I said, I'm able to get into your ecosystem. You're able to get into mine, and we're just building. We're just continue to build communities. Yep. So now this is a teaching podcast, and I always ask this question especially to my high achievers and top performers. What would be your top 3 pieces of business information that you would give some advice if somebody's starting a business today in 2022 going into 23?
Man, the first thing I'm going to reference is I'm going to go back to Dan Nicholson's teaching, and that is to actually figure out what you want and then figure out what actions and what business, etc., you can have that's going to bring you closer to that. Because like I said, you don't want to burn out. The second one is to get those standard operating procedures as early as you can. I already explained why it's going to pay off in the long run, because it's going to make it easy to delegate off your plate. It's going to make scales significantly easier and all of the above. And then the third thing is just to get clear on your actual media strategy, but stay true to yourself and what it is that you want, and just be yourself and lean into that long-term and short-term media. And it's an interesting thing that happens when you boil it down to those things, is it sounds too simple and people get mad, but the people get mad because I've simplified it too much. But it's really the core, like, as humans, doing those three things is what's going to make us successful. We're not good at being consistent and knowing what to do all the time, no matter who you are. Everybody has days where they need to be able to refer to an SOP. They need to know that their content's being repurposed because they just don't feel like making the content that day, or that they have long-term media that's compounding because they don't feel like creating something that day. And then ultimately just getting clear on you. Like, those are the three things that keep you from ending up resenting what you build around you, because I've been in this space for 6 years, and I've already a couple different times been guilty of building something that I completely resented. So that's what I'll scream at the top of my lungs, is just to play your game, do it the way you want, and bring yourself closer to what you actually want, not what this mentor says you should do, when maybe their life might be different than you and their goals might be different with you. So different than you. So define what you want and make your decisions based on that. And then
I love it, brother. So now, where do we find, what's the name of your podcast? Where do we find it? And how can we support you and what you got going on?
So the name of my show is Under the Crown. I bring on different people in my network, and I interview them on the kings and queens journeys that made them who they are today. I pick their brains about their expertise, and then I dive into a little bit about what they actually do to carry their crowns, make sure nothing's slipping through the cracks, and maintain their mindset, physicality, and all of those things. And that's really the best way to get involved with me right now, or just add me on Facebook. My website's pretty easy to remember. It's treycarmichael.us. And if anybody wants to book a call with me, connect with me, get a short synopsis of me, it's all on connect.treycarmichael.us.
I love it, brother. Thank you. And like I said, we've been friends for years, and I finally got you on the new show. And I'm just so grateful that you blessed me to hang out with us today. Like I said, Trey, I love you. I've been listening to your podcast more and more as I'm getting deeper into this, into the entrepreneurial space. If your numbers have gone up, I'm taking full credit, because I've been binge listening to your episodes. So, brother, I just want to say thank you for being a friend all these years and for always supporting the show.
Absolutely, man. And one thing about me is I support the people who I see actually making ripples and supporting others. So ultimately, just thank you for being you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, brother. I love you. And guys, like my t-shirt says, today I decide. Guys, you can decide whether you want to be successful today or whether you want to be a failure today. It's all up to you. It's all up to your decisions. So make that decision. Make sure you follow this. Make sure you follow Trey's podcast, because the more you learn, the better. The more you learn, the more you earn. All right, guys, we're going to run. I love you. Remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is butt up. Trey, have an amazing week, brother. Keep crushing it.
Yes, sir. You too.
God bless.